Hello, everyone, and welcome to the June 26, 2022 episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. I am your host, James Bell, the leader of the Boxing Source here and on social media. We are present on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course through the YouTube page. We have like interviews and various things on the YouTube page. Of course, over the past couple of weeks, we have been in attendance at the International Boxing Hall of Fame. You still have that induction ceremony that is posted on the YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. And we do have the latest interview with WBC President Mauricio Suleiman. That is on the YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. But here in this particular podcast, we got a few things that we're going to be talking about, including the card that was in the San Antonio area that was headlined by Jesse Bam Rodriguez versus Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. We're going to go through that particular fight, plus the co-feature bout and a couple of other bouts that were part of that particular card. And we'll go through a couple of news and notes within the boxing world, including potential fights that could be later on down the line and announcements that did take place over the course of the week. So we're going to be running that down here in this particular episode, but we will start with what happened in the main event over in the Techport Arena in San Antonio. Techport Arena, I don't even, man, Techport, I don't even, man, to be real, I don't even know it. I didn't even know they had something like that. But either way, you had as the main event the WBC Super Flyweight title, Jesse Bam Rodriguez, or as he is properly named, Jesse Rodriguez Franco, against Srisaket Sor Rungvisai, or as y'all know, Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. So you had Jesse Bam Rodriguez. They're coming in with a record of 15-0 with 10 KOs against Srisaket Sor Rungvisai, former world champion himself, with a record of 50 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw. Of course, Sor Rungvisai is a guy, of course, is known for defeating Juan Francisco Estrada and Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. Well, he beat Chocolatito twice, in 2017, and then followed that with a win over Juan Francisco Estrada, who is the current WBC franchise champion. But he did also have a loss to Estrada in 2019, but had 3 wins since then, and was going up against Jesse Bam Rodriguez, who did win the WBC Super Flyweight title, which was vacant at the time, against Carlos Cuadras early in the year, and he turned right around and got right back in the ring against Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. Yep, that's right. After being in the ring in February 5th, he comes right back and comes in about 4 months later to face Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. Of course, Rungvisai is known for being one of the hardest hitters in the super flyweight division. Of course, you did have, like I said, in the 50 wins of his professional career, 43 of those wins came by way of knockout. So that he was someone to watch out for when it came to his power shots. And of course, he's very heavy-handed. And that was what was emphasized going into this particular fight for Jesse Rodriguez, a young man coming in there that is, from the San Antonio area. But he, was definitely aware that here, of course, he had his trainers there, Robert Garcia, who, did have some time or took some time with Anthony Joshua, as he is now the new trainer of Anthony Joshua. But you had part of the Garcia team still there working with Bam Rodriguez in preparation for his fight against Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. And man, from the opening round, it just looked like Bam Rodriguez had probably I would say his best fight, his most complete fight up to this point, or at least particularly since he has been in scheduled 10-round fights. He's had a few 10-round fights before facing Quadras for that vacant WBC title, super flyweight title at the time. But here he was just, very fast, very sharp, and aware of whatever Srisaket Sor Rungvisai was doing. It looked like, Sor Rungvisai was just going to be patient, just, kind of like walk forward, try to catch most of the shots from Bam Rodriguez, and then see if Bam Rodriguez would get tired in the second half of the fight or in the later rounds, and then, try to wail on him. But, man, Bam Rodriguez was just very sharp. Like I said, he was definitely cognizant of where he was at every point of the ring, utilized his reach advantage and used that as his base to, kind of like throw his jab, measure spacing between him and his opponent there in Sor Rungvisai, and just work from that, and also use good foot movement, while Srisaket Sor Rungvisai just couldn't really catch up to him. Both of them are southpaws, but I think with Sor Rungvisai having power in both hands, he wanted to see if he could switch things up and try to throw off the young guy from San Antonio. But there was just nothing really there for Sor Rungvisai over the course of this bout. And, you just saw, like I said, great timing with the jab, positioning, where Bam Rodriguez is going to be, timed Sor Rungvisai on multiple occasions when Rungvisai was throwing, power shots and catching them with counters and moving out the way whenever necessary, because it was only when Sor Rungvisai was kind of close enough or in the inside of close quarters where he could actually do any type of work there against Bam Rodriguez. And Robert Garcia just said, look, I mean, you could pretty much take your time in this one, because there really isn't much that Sor Rungvisai could do here at this particular point. And for a majority of those opening rounds, you kind of seeing the vast difference in speed, timing, and accuracy there from Bam Rodriguez. And I know that there was one point before the 7th round where it seemed like Bam Rodriguez did connect with the shot, and Sor Rungvisai was all balanced, and it looked like he kind of had one of his gloves touched the canvas. It could have been scored a knockdown, but wasn't quite scored a knockdown. But you still had, of course, Sor Rungvisai just there, of course, with his guard up, just trying to come forward, not really opening with a jab, not really opening, or coming in there with a head movement or anything like that, which kind of spells for disaster with someone that's, younger than you and faster than you. And it was just a bad night there for Srisaket Sor Rungvisai, and 7th round, you did see Sor Rungvisai taste the canvas, there after, multiple rounds of Bam Rodriguez is outclassing Sor Rungvisai. And eventually it came to the 8th round where, a flurry from Bam Rodriguez while Sor Rungvisai was on the ropes forced Mark Calloway to stop the bout within past halfway through the 8th round. And, the instant that it was stopped, Bam Rodriguez was just, he dropped to the canvas, rolled over in joy, and it was very happy. And like I said, his trainer there, Robert Garcia, jumped in the ring and hugged him. And that was just a very, very good performance there from Bam Rodriguez for him to, retain that WBC Super Flyweight Championship. He is now 16-0 with 11 of those wins now by way of knockout. And I mean, you see, like the topic for me, man, is given this performance from Bam Rodriguez, and he's had a good performance against Carlos Cuadras, earlier this year. Cuadras, of course, is a long-standing guy there in the super flyweight division. Srisaket Sor Rungvisai, another one that's long-standing fighter there in the super flyweight division. What would this mean as far as like, hey, where is Bam Rodriguez at super flyweight? I mean, you do have like the rankings that are out there where you have Juan Francisco Estrada, who is the WBC franchise champion, currently. But we'll see, what happens with that. Of course, we had a discussion about that with WBC President Mauricio Soleiman. So he does explain that situation with Estrada. He's there as the WBC franchise champion, but also the Ring Magazine super flyweight champion. And you did have Srisaket Sor Rungvisai kind of like ranked there at number one, with Chocolatito Gonzalez there at number 2 and Kazuya Ioka at number 3. Bam Rodriguez was ranked at number 6, beating the number 1 guy. So that will really kind of like boost his standing there in the Ring Magazine rankings or, other rankings that are out there for super flyweight, whether it's the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board or Premier Boxing Organization that does have those type of rankings there for super flyweight, and I just said like I said, I thought that was a great overall performance there by Bam Rodriguez that kind of like opened a few eyes there at 115. I know that they were talking about he could still like go down to 112 or even 108. That's what him and his trainer Rob Garcia were talking about. And I'm like, man, why do that? You beat Carlos Cuadras, you just beat Srisaket Sor Rungvisai, and you still got 2 of those, quote unquote Fab 4 guys there, super flyweight. Still, you got Juan Francisco Estrada, is the Ring Magazine champion, like I said. You got, of course, Chocolatito Gonzalez that's out there. He would become, real competitive guy against all of those fighters, all of them. You do also have, WBO champion Kazuya Ioka, that's also there in the Ring Magazine rankings. So, and also Joshua Franco does hold a, belt there at 115 pounds. So I'm like, why even go back? Why even go down to 112? You moved up. You got a vacant WBC title with the win over Carlos Cuadras. You just stopped Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. So why would you come off that momentum and then go back down to like 112 or something? You know what I'm saying? I don't see like what would be the point of doing that. I would just ride that wave, continue with that momentum, and then see what happens first with Juan Francisco Estrada if he does return and they have maybe a fight against him and Chocolatito Gonzalez, and you can have a fight in the interim and then wait for the winner. That would be your most lucrative fight there that you can have at this point. Because like I really don't see like where you could really like do something where you would have a good lucrative fight there at 112. I mean, you do have guys like Sonny Edwards there, that's a champion. Julio Cesar Martinez, that's a champion. But do they pull the money like like Chocolatito could? Nope. Do they pull the money like Juan Francisco Estrada could? Nope. Could they do something where you could have a fight against Kazuda Ioka, probably in Japan? You can get money there. So why go back down when you got all these lucrative fights here at 115? Uh, for Ben Rodriguez, it's probably better for him to stay at 115. Eddie Hearn better like see what's going down with the WBC franchise title, with Ron Francisco Estrada and someone Chocolatito Gonzalez. Those guys are like kind of like around there at with the boxing source pound for pound rankings. So you want to see if you could have Bam Rodriguez kind of like compete with one of those guys in the future, whether it's like in 2023 or something like that. I would do something to try to make that type of move. Robert Garcia has some pull with, what Bam Rodriguez does. Then I just say, hey, go ahead and just have him say 115. And you see how sharp he is. You see how strong he is with his punches. You see that he could still move very well, at least against Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. I know that Rungvisai is kind of like a straightforward type of fighter. But when you talk about Juan Francisco Estrada and you talk about Chocolatito Gonzalez, these guys, even though they're like top fighters, they're still guys that have had a lot of wear and tear on their tires. So you want to see if you could pounce on the chance to go against those legends. I mean, that's what they were mentioning after the fight. When they're talking about Ben Rodriguez, it's like, hey, you fought Quadras, fought Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. Hey, you got them other two out there. You got Chocolatito. You got Juan Francisco Estrada. Why not go after those two guys? You can have those guys back to back to back to back. And people will be like saying, hey, this could be the new young star there at that particular weight class. I mean, you got one guy that's, around that 115, 118 weight class, and here's something too, while I'm mentioning that. There was one thing that one of our longstanding panelists or columnists mentioned in reference to a guy that is kind of like considered by a good amount of people to be among the top in the pound for pound rankings. And that is Naoya Inoue. When Naoya Inoue was at 115 pounds, he didn't face guys like Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. He didn't face Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. He didn't face Juan Francisco Estrada. Ben Rodriguez could have the opportunity to face all three of those guys. If he could face all three of them, he could beat them all. That would really say something as far as like, what he's done at 115. So I think that is something that should be really considered by Bam Rodriguez and his team. That he should continue his career first at 115 pounds. And then try to go after those, other two fighters there in Juan Francisco Estrada and Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. That would be something really big for him, especially if, they could try to do something where, hey, if he feels like, or if him, Robert Garcia, and Eddie Hearn, like having fights there in San Antonio is, pretty lucrative or pretty good, or they could pull a good profit. Why not continue to have Ben Rodriguez have fights there in San Antonio? So that's something for them to consider in that particular case. Right now, going into the co-feature bout, you had the unified championships at super bantamweight on the line as MJ Akhmadaliev or Marajan Akhmadaliev defended the WBA and IBF Super Bantamweight Championships against Ronnie Rios. Ronnie Rios came in with a record of 33 wins and 3 losses. MJ Akhmadaliev is there undefeated at 10-0. Ronnie Rios, did have some times when he, contended for the world title at super bantamweight, but fell short. Here was, one of those other shots for him to, go after the super bantamweight titles against MJ Akhmadaliev. And, Akhmadaliev there, came in there with a record of 10-0. There was like one time when, I saw him, man, this was like a good amount of time ago. I think this was, like back in like, oh, shoot, like 2018 or something like that, And I was like, I wasn't really all too, impressed with him. Of course, he had the one of those, of course, one of those guys that has the extensive amateur background and, could be like a World Series boxing champion or something like that. But you just at the time, I didn't really see, what the overall hype was, there. We did have the fight against Daniel Roman in 2020, where he won by a split decision, where multiple people felt like Daniel Roman kind of like pulled the win off that. But was MJ that ended up getting the win and becoming the unified champ in that instance. And he has defended that title twice up to, the point yesterday. And was going up here against Ronnie Rios. And, it looked like he was having a pretty good start. But Ronnie Rios kind of like got back at it in the third round. You're seeing like the experience of Ronnie Rios, the pro experience of Ronnie Rios, kind of like get the better of MJ by him getting to the inside, him backing up MJ, getting him to the ropes, and then working the body a couple times. But he wasn't really consistent with that. And you kind of like seeing that MJ Akhmadaliev was very sharp with his jabs and kind of like coming in with left hands and things like that. But midway through the fight, it seemed like there was an issue with the left hand of MJ Akhmadaliev, and he wasn't really using that left hand as much. Now, you would have thought, with that being kind of like visible, that you don't see your opponent using their strong hand, you would try to take advantage of it. You would try to press the action. You would try to either, come forward, press the action, and force the hand of MJ Akhmadaliev, or you could try to do it to where he would kind of like go off the strong hand. But this was kind of like a instance where a fighter using one hand got the better of his opponent. And I've seen it before, but the last time I seen it, the judges didn't have the decision in their favor. I'm still not over that joint with guy Mark Messiah and Gary Russell Jr. Gary Russell Jr. beat him with one hand, all right? And I'm sticking to it. But anyway, what MJ Akhmadaliev did, he didn't use his left hand, but he used his right hand, and he set up different shots with that right hand. And one of those punches was the right hook. And at one point, it seemed like MJ Akhmadaliev could not miss with the right hook on Ronnie Rios. And there were times where he like hurt Ronnie Rios with that right hook over the top, And the thing with MJ Akhmadaliev is like in this particular instance, he was able to do things where he could set up shots, where he could use his feet to fake out Ronnie Rios. And he did that on multiple occasions over the course of his bout. And, he got through a few rounds, basically using the right hook. And then all of a sudden he started to use that left hand a little bit more. And, he was like, to me, he was like well ahead in this bout against Ronnie Rios. I know that Ronnie Rios did win like a couple of rounds, I'd say about, two, maybe three over the course of like 10 rounds or so. But, in the 11th round, you seen that Ronnie Rios was getting beat up a little bit. And in the 12th round, MJ Akhmadaliev just, stepped on the gas and there was a one point. There was one point. I think it was like in the fourth round, back to the first half of the fight. MJ Akmadaliev landed a big body shot on Ronnie Rios that like it was like oof, like Ronnie Rios could have went down to it, but he used every ounce of his survival tactics to not go down in that particular fight. And at the time when I saw that, I said, that pretty much saved Ronnie Rios a point, because he could have, went down to one knee and it could have been a 10-8 round. And at that particular time, he was already down like, 3 or 4 rounds. So you have a 10-8 round, you're going to have to do something. You really going to have to do something, But that kind of like got back to Ronnie Rios later in the fight. And in the 12th round, MJ Akmadaliev landed in another body shot that really affected Ronnie Rios and had his guard drop down, and he ducked down. And with him ducking down, it opened up MJ Akmadaliev to just wheel on the face of Ronnie Rios. He landed about like three power hooks, 3 power shots before Ronnie Rios went down to one knee in the 12th round. And the count was administered. Ronnie Rios, did like take a good amount of time to try to recover from that. But then Akmadaliev just was getting right at him, got him to the ropes, was still sharp, was still patient, was able to land, big shots and picked his shots very well for him to close out the particular fight by TKO. Rafael Ramos stepped in, stopped the bout, with about a minute or so left in the 12th round for MJ Akmadaliev to win. He stays undefeated. He does keep his versions of the Super Bantamweight Championship. And now, you know what? Talk is over. We don't need to see no more at the Super Bantamweight division. There's only one fight that should be out there in the Super Bantamweight division, with MJ Akmadaliev taking out Ronnie Rios. Ronnie Rios at the time was the top-rated guy in the WBA rankings, and Stephen Fulton, he had his recent win, against Daniel Rahman, and Daniel Rahman was pretty much the top-rated guy there for him in the WBC rankings, So for me, there's only one other fight out there at Super Bantamweight. Stephen Fulton, MJ Akmadaliev, undisputed. No more talking, no more other fights, none of that. Should be undisputed, 122, make it happen. There shouldn't be anything else there for Stephen Fulton or anything else there for MJ Akmadaliev. Stephen Fulton, like I said, he is the 2021 Boxing Source Fighter of the Year for his wins to get the belts that he got. He was, able to defeat the heartbreaker there, Brandon Figueroa, in the bout that he had last year, and like I said, he, had his win over Daniel Rahman this year. So there shouldn't be any other fights left for them. Like I said, Fulton beat Brandon Figueroa, Angelo Leo, and Daniel Rahman. Those were his last 3 fights. In Ring Magazine rankings, number 3 is Brandon Figueroa. Number 4 is Daniel Rahman. Number 5 is Angelo Leo. He fights and beats Akmadaliev. He would beat the top 4 guys in Ring Magazine. So I don't know, man. Shout out to Mr. Who You Pick on the live chat. World Ranked in the building. Do I think Fulton MJ will happen? Man, listen. There shouldn't be any other fight that's out there. There should be no other fight that's available. Make the fight happen. You know what? And on top of that, you know what? I'll do it even better. Why don't y'all have the fight in Philadelphia? You know what? I mean, there hasn't been a fight for Stephen Fulton since he's been a world champion in Philadelphia. What would be that would be a perfect fight. I know that probably Eddie Hearn or Akhmadaliev's team or whatever it is probably wouldn't be down for it. But shoot, AMJ Akhmadaliev ain't pulling no weight nowhere. He ain't pulling no money nowhere. and on top of that, hold on. Let me make sure of this. I want to check the rec. Let me check the rec real quick. You know what I'm saying? Um, like Akhmadaliev is fighting like Brooklyn. He's fighting what Hollywood, Florida, or Miami Gardens. He's fighting New Hampshire, man. Like he can fight. He can fight in Philadelphia. Why not? I mean, it don't have to be in like the Liacra Center. Let's see if it could be in a bigger building there in Philadelphia or something. You know what I mean? But we should have undisputed at 122 pounds Stephen Fulton versus Marajan Akhmadaliev. You know what I'm saying? Let's have this happen. Let's make it happen in 2022. You know what? I'm saying this. Like, I mean, we last year, was it last year? I think it was last year. Let me make sure. Last year we had a good few undisputed world title fights last year. We should have the same this year. Why not? Let's have it at 122. Yeah, and let's have it at 147 pounds. Yeah, let's do it. Let's have undisputed happen at 147 and 122. Hey, if you're not gonna have Fulton versus MJ in Philadelphia, then have it in Las Vegas as a co-feature bout to Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford for the undisputed welterweight championship. That's right, I said it. All right, I don't care, man. All right, we should be able to have these undisputed fights, and that goes back into what Mauricio Suleiman said on Friday. Like, the thing with Stephen Fulton and Daniel Rahman was a point where Daniel Rahman was the number one contender, not only for the WBC, but for the WBO. They wanted to work together to kind of like make these fighters be contenders or not top contenders in multiple, organizations, so that these fighters that are unified or undisputed champions don't have mandatory after mandatory after mandatory after mandatory. So why not just have all of these other fighters try to fight each other and build up the rankings to where you have, a top-rated contender that you can say, hey, we know that this guy, he's not the champion, but he is worthy to face one of those top guys there that holds a world title because he beat another top guy that could be within the top, 4 or 5 or 6 in the division. So why not have that happen more often in these weight classes? I don't see why not, and that's why, I kind of like feel like, hey, for 122, we've already had, 2 of the top contenders face world champions, face unified champions, and the unified champions won. So there should be no other choice at 122 but to have Stephen Fulton and Marajan Akhmadaliev face each other for the undisputed super bantamweight championship, and that's that right there. So you got that. I know that there was another couple fights that were kind of like featured there on the zone. You did have the Caskiller Jessica McCaskill, who's there with the undisputed welterweight championships there for women that going up against Alma Bar, and there was like a good amount of things going on with the Cash Killer. She was like, she really didn't think that Bar was really all that good. Know that Bar was a taller fighter, had longer reach, but she just didn't. Man, she wasn't. It looked like she wasn't it. And you know what? McCaskill tried to show that, from the jump. She was going for haymakers. She was going for haymakers from like the first 10 seconds of round 1. McCaskill, she kind of like does that though. She does, kind of like go for haymakers or go for the big punches right off the bat. And I know that, she tries to go for the stoppage, but in this particular instance, with someone like Ibarra who really isn't like, that technical or something like that, I did say during the fight that, if McCaskill was like, patient and kind of like was trying to, you know, get at a bar with more precision, she could have took out a bar within 2 rounds or less than 2 rounds because the bar was there to hit, right there to hit. It was just that, hey, you just got to be sharp and you got to like hit with, emphasis. And yeah, McCaskill was able to do that. But there were also times with the way that she was going at Ibarra, she got caught a couple times by Ibarra. Now Ibarra, she, was in there, had like, a situation, of course, with a child, and they talked about that leading into this particular bout, and I think that was, a major factor uh, in Ibarra after her going to her corner, you know, at the end of the third round. She was like, she didn't want to go through with this. I mean, she just said no. She was like, no, you don't want to go out there. She's like, no, I want to do it, basically. And I'm like, oh man, I'm like this is for the undisputed championship. This is for the undisputed championship. We get the situation, but when it's for the undisputed championship, you don't get these type of opportunities. You don't have these type of chances uh very often. You know, so for her to just say, you know what, I'm done. That's it. It kind of like bothered me a little bit. I think it may have bothered a few people, but it'll bother me because when you're fighting for a world championship, you gotta give it 100 1,000%. I mean, it doesn't. You don't have to be like Taylor Serrano, which could be a candidate for fight of the year in Taylor Serrano, but you still have to have it to where you have some type of effort or give some type of effort to where you may have a shot. In this instance where it's 10 rounds, 2 minutes in each round, and like I said, Ibarra had times where she caught McCaskill, and if she, just had that thing where she would have been, just patient or just, bit down on a gum shield, maybe she could have caught Jessica McCaskill. Those chances are out there. But she didn't want to, go through all of that. So, you know, Jessica McCaskill retains her undisputed titles there at the 147-pound weight limit. And after the bout, McCaskill did kind of like say that there really doesn't seem like there is much out there, for her at 147 pounds. Checking the box rank ratings or points rating system, Ibarra was number 2, and Candy White number 4 is, same Candy White that, McCaskill beat in their last fight. So really, there isn't that much there for her at 147 pounds. So she did kind of like consider going down to 140 pounds. You do have Chantel Cameron there at 140 pounds. You do have Callie Reyes there at 140 pounds. Actually, I mean, I don't see how you can't have, what was it? Cameron. I think you could have had something where you could set up a undisputed there at 140 pounds first, and then after that you could have undisputed versus undisputed. Why not? You know, I mean, if McCaskill says that she could get down to 140 pounds, I mean, she did weigh in at 144 for this particular fight, that she had against um, Bar or whatnot. Um, why not, go ahead and wait it out, see if they could make an undisputed bout at 140 and fight the undisputed champion. There it could be at 140. It could be that catch weight. Why not? I'll say go ahead and wait it out, do that. Particularly if it is Chantel Cameron, then you might be able to get a good amount of bread for a fight of that magnitude. So why not do that? And wait it out. That could be cool for them. All right, so what is it? Chantel. Hold on, let me see something here real quick. I think I think Cameron's there with maybe there with Matchroom Boxing. I think she is with Matchroom Boxing there. I mean, she is from the UK, so why not have that? So I mean, they're Matchroom. You have the network in the zone. You could just have that fight. Just maybe you hit up Eddie Hearn and say, hey, you know what, Eddie? Either I can fight Chantel Cameron next, or if we can see what happens with Kelly Reyes, if she is, willing to, have this fight with Chantel Cameron, as Kelly Reyes, did, have her last bout under the zone, as part of that card. I think it was headlined by Demetrius Andre versus Jason Quigley. So if you have Kelly Reyes and you have Chantel Cameron that's been, under Matchroom cards, why not? So you had that undisputed battle 140. You have, the Cash Killer there 147. She could wait it out. And you have undisputed versus undisputed. Why not? So that could happen. Now, next up, that's from that card that I was able to check out is Raymond Ford versus Richard Medina. Both of those guys came in this bout with undefeated records or unbeaten records. Raymond Ford did come in there with a record of 11 wins, 0 losses, and 1. Richard Medina there at 13-0. The thing about this one was Raymond Ford came into this bout after his fight in the Footprint Center in Phoenix in February, where he won via split decision over another unbeaten fighter at the time, Edward Vasquez. And a number of people felt like he really, didn't do very well in that bout. He did have a draw against his last undefeated fighter that he faced in Eric Perez in 2021. That was a split draw. So we had to see what he could do against Richard Medina. And man, yeah, some people did think he lost to Vasquez there in his last bout. But here against Richard Medina, he did not leave many doubts at all. He was very comfortable in that bout against Medina. He was like very fast, very sharp, and very efficient there as a southpaw. And and he was there around, the featherweight division. This was for a couple of those minor featherweight titles. And man, in this particular bout, man, he was giving me flashbacks to some of a former featherweight champion, that is one of my favorite fighters. I was like, oh man. I was like, oh. I was like, oh, no, you don't look like my guy. You don't look like my guy. But yo, he was fast in this joint, man. I was like, yo, he was having Medina like. But man, if he was like putting in a good number of combinations in there, he would have probably washed this guy. That he was just very patient, just throwing a jab, just throwing a single jab, bam, 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 and just comfortable with that, and not allowing, you know, his opponent in Richard Medina really get to the inside and try to run up. You know, he didn't stay on the ropes that long. He didn't lose clinches that much, and he was very comfortable over the course of that bout. And he nearly got a shutout in 10 rounds. Only one judge gave Medina 1 round. Ruben Carrion gave Medina 1 round. But Raymond Ford stays unbeaten. Like I said, does have a couple of minor featherweight titles. It was suggested that maybe, just maybe, he could be put in the ring against a former world champion. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like I'm like, I see that he's looking very good. But former world champion, I don't know. I did kind of like mention a suggestion, maybe a Kiko, maybe a Kiko. Maybe a Kiko. But I'm like, some of y'all gotta like slow down sometimes with some of these guys. You gotta slow down, you know. Like even now, like I mean, what y'all gonna do? Y'all gonna put him up against someone like him, or like a Mauricio Lara, maybe? I don't know. You know, I mean, like shoot, Kid Galahad, maybe. You know, I mean, those are the guys that are out there. Now Raymond Ford, of course, is under Matchroom Boxing and Eddie Hearn, and I did mention a good number of guys there that were former world champs, and those guys have fought in Matchroom cards, in Mauricio Lara and Kiko Martinez. You know, you also do have former champion Kid Galahad. That is part of those IBF rankings. And yes, Josh Warrington is the IBF champion. So if they want to see about putting in Raymond Ford against one of those guys, maybe that's a suggestion. You might have someone like a Jazza Dickens that's there available for him, you know. But those are kind of like the potential opponents that you have there for Raymond Ford there at 126. We got to see what's going to happen with some of these other world champions. We got to see if Leigh Wood versus Leo Santa Cruz is going to happen in the WBA. We got to see if Gary Russell Jr. is going to have a return bout here later this year after recovering from shoulder surgery, and of course losing his father transition. Of course last month. Of course, like his brother, one of his brothers, they're Batman. Hey, maybe an Oscar Escandón. Man, shoot, Escandón, yeah, Escandón's still fighting. Oh man, yeah, that's another one. Oh, maybe a Can Zhu too. He's a former world champion too. Can Zhu is a former world champ. Kind of, or if people count the WBA championship as a world championship, then Can Zhu was a world champion. So you do have that. Okay. But yeah, the 126-pound division, is kind of, it's going to be pretty busy too. You do have coming up Misael Vargas. It's going to be a good one. You do have Joey Gonzalez versus Dog Bay. That's coming up over in Minnesota. I think that is. You did have Robeson Ramirez, Spark, Abraham Nova. Like he's sending the bed, bro. He's sending the bed. And so, like I said, that's a good amount of activity there in the 126-pound division that could happen here within or in 2022. That's around those top 10, top 15 rankings in each of those sanctioning bodies. So Raymond Ford, like I said, you got Oscar Sandona's world rank said on the live chat. You got Ken Zhu, you got Jazza Dickens, you got Kate Galahad, you got Kiko Martinez, you got Mauricio Lara. Could be one of those guys. Now, if there's someone like a Kiko or Oscar Escandon, maybe even a Mauricio Lara, someone that would be right in front of them, matchmakers might want to jump at the chance that one of those guys for a Raymond Ford. Because if Raymond Ford has like a feels the same way as he did yesterday against one of those guys, man, it could look almost like Bam Rodriguez versus Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. It could look like that. I'll say it. It could look like that. So that could be potentially something there to consider there for Raymond Ford. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of like what they got going down there at 126 pounds. And I basically like covered mostly everything that went down on that DAZN card. You did have, what do they call it? They call this guy. Oh yeah, White Chocolate. Jason Williams. Nikita Bobby did have a unanimous decision win over Larios Jr. That is like his fourth consecutive decision victory. He is 12-0 there, out of Brooklyn, New York. Not sure. Like I didn't check out the wins, so I don't know if he was there at like 160 pounds or a little bit north of that. So you'll see like what he does later on in his professional career. It looks like they said that they put it at super welterweight. So he kind of like was around that 154-pound limit, I guess. All right, cool. So with that being said, that, kind of like goes through that card that was in San Antonio. I know a couple of folks that did attend that bout or that card in San Antonio. They said it was a good little experience. You did have, of course, like I said, Bam Rodriguez is from San Antonio, Texas. So, the hometown crowd really got a good show there on the main event for that particular fight card. So, like I said, with Bam Rodriguez having potential bouts against someone like a Ron Francisco Estrada or a Chocolatito Gonzalez, maybe those guys should face each other and he could wait it out and face the winner. That could be, a good move for him, But, outside of that, like I said, you got Kazuda Ioka. There's a WBO champ. Fernando Martinez is an IBF champ. Josh Franco does hold a version of a world championship, but what is it? Josh Franco, I think, is with Top Rank or something like that. So I'm not sure like how that will work out. But oh no, that ain't it. Josh Franco is his brother. That's right. That's what they were mentioning. Almost forgot about that. Yeah. So he said like, hey, there was like any case where Josh Franco ended up being like a mandatory challenger to Bam Rodriguez's world title, he said he forfeit. He said that on record. So there's that. So yeah, like I said, that pretty much goes through everything there on that card. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, Bam Rodriguez, like I was saying earlier, on the live chat. Shout out to Jay on the live chat. He said he thinks that Bam, would pretty much destroy Chocolatito and Juan Francisco Estrada or whatnot. Yeah. I think the thing is that with Chocolatito and Estrada, they don't really have. Well, maybe with Chocolatito a little bit, but with him being, like I said, having wear and tear on those tires, he won't be able to move as much as Ben Rodriguez would. And Ben Rodriguez, it wasn't just the way that he placed his shots, it was how he moved around laterally and side to side that was, very good. And with him being under the tutelage of Robert Garcia, like he's gonna develop to be a really really good fighter if he just stays very sharp and stays active and all that. He will be a really really good fighter. And like I said, if he has the chance to face and beat Chocolatito Gonzalez and Juan Francisco Estrada, he would do something that Naoya Inoue didn't do while he was at 115. So there's that. So that is, like I said, that kind of like goes through what was happening there on that particular card. I know that there was like another card that was coming up there, but what was it? Yeah, I ain't even pretty much kind of like go into the thing there with what is it? Fight in Mexico with Hecky Butler and Elwin Soto. They say like that was kind of like a pretty much an upset win by Hecky Butler in that instance. But that's something that I might have to revisit sometime later this week on reference to that. So going into like news and notes there for the sport of boxing, next week coming up, you do have the juggernaut Joe Joyce going up against Christian Hammer. Maris Brightus will be facing High Opataya. Yeah, High Opataya. All right. Callum Johnson faces Igor Mikhalkin, and Zolana Tete faces Jason Cunningham, among other fights coming up on Saturday. I do have like a couple of other news and notes coming. One thing is, it looks like the former WBC heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder has not made a final decision on a ring return. This is, coming off of the thing through article in Boxing Scene, right? And I did kind of like discuss, potential fights for Deontay Wilder that could involve the WBC heavyweight title. That's if Tyson Fury does decide on retiring. But according to Mauricio Suleiman, Tyson Fury does not look like he is going to retire. Yes, he did have his mandatory defense of the world title against Dylan White, knocked him out with an uppercut. Did consider facing Francis Ngannou in a mixed martial arts or some type of fusion type thing or whatever he said out there, right? But Deontay Wilder, it looked like at one point, kind of like heard from, my guy, Jake Donovan. He kind of like felt like Deontay Wilder wasn't coming back. And then there were some instances or some hints that he might come back. Now it just seems like kind of like it's leaning towards like he's, maybe coming back. He said he's definitely considering coming back. That he's trying to figure that out and get things situated. When it says like if he does return to the ring, Wilder made it clear that it's about money or not. It's not about the financial things. I never had to return to boxing ever again in my life. I've set my life up. I'm like, and yeah, I'm like, hey, he got his thing set up with his fights with Tyson Fury, the increased guarantee that he got, where when he fought Dominic Brazil, that was for an increased amount of money. When he had the second fight against Luis Ortiz, that was for an increased amount of money. And his two fights with Tyson Fury were for 15 to 20 to $25 million or so. So he's pretty much set, And with that being said, if he's going to return to the ring, number one, it would have to be a pay-per-view level type of event. You know, you're talking about, I don't even think 15, maybe 20. You know, but this is coming from, me listening to the boxing community, the people who say that they miss Deontay Wilder. Okay, so they miss Deontay Wilder, and from a business standpoint, you pretty much have created a demand for Deontay Wilder. So regardless of who he faces, whether it's someone like what was it? Shout out to the PBC podcast that had their recent podcast earlier. Last week. If you had someone like a Robert Hellenius, if you had someone like a Otto Wallin, or if you had someone like a Frank Sanchez Foray, those are three potential guys that Deontay Wilder could face in this comeback fight. And for me, I've kind of like said, if he's going to come back, it should really be against Robert Hellenius. Robert Hellenius, of course, had got a version of a WBA heavyweight title or something like that, like a WBA gold or like I don't even know like what type of WBA title he got, but he's had big wins in his career, so he kind of like was riding the good wave, had his stoppage victories over Adam Kaunaki back to back. So, and I know that he's been, in the what is it, like in training there with Deontay Wilder or something like that, sparring with Deontay Wilder or something like that. But Deontay Wilder, with him, Tyson Fury, and Anthony Joshua, those are like the three most lucrative fighters there in the heavyweight division. So if you're fighting one of those three guys, you're going to get the most money out of it. So why not go for a bout against Deontay Wilder where you know that you're going to get the most amount of money that you can get outside of Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury? Why not? Go for it. And, like a guy on here, usually on the podcast, says MVO, you have two big, meaty men bumping meat, or whatever that thing is. Don't say that. But like I said, at least the thing that you kind of like know, outside of one fight with Deontay Wilder, that someone's gonna get knocked out. Either Wilder's gonna knock out or stop somebody, or Wilder is gonna get knocked out or stop. So that is the thing that kind of like brings in the quote unquote casual fans who really see boxing as like a gladiator type sport. It's almost like the thing when Mike Tyson was on his rise or something like that. You've seen that he was having a string of knockout victories. He was knocking people out. That's what was bringing them people to his fights. That is what brought people to Wilder's fights at a certain point of his career. So you build it up. You continue to talk about him potentially returning. You build up the demand, and maybe that demand drives up the price there for Deontay Wilder, and maybe it'll be enough for him to return to the ring, for at least this fight. And you still have more fights that are out there. You still have fights against Andy Ruiz Jr. that could be out there, even though, September 4th or whatever it is, Andy Ruiz Jr. will be facing Luis Ortiz, and if Ruiz Jr. gets through that bout and wins, then you could have Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz Jr. It won't probably be, at the end of this year, but it'll probably be at the beginning of next year. And you still have the demand, the want, the desire to have Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder, regardless of what happens in the rematch between Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk for the unified heavyweight titles. And I think that from a quote unquote business perspective, or popularity perspective, people want to see Anthony Joshua defeat Alexander Usyk, even though Alexander Usyk, from a skills perspective, is better than Anthony Joshua. Um, and you kind of like seen that in the first fight. Even though there were hints, there were come some type of instances where Anthony Joshua did kind of like get to Alexander Usyk. Yes, you did see Alexander Usyk have a bloody nose and that type of thing, but Usyk, with his skill level, with his amount of experience, he was able to get through that and close the show in the 12th round to get the decision win over Anthony Joshua last year. This year, we'll see what happens. This year, of course, you had Alexander Usyk go through what he went through. Um, I'll be interested, one, to see where Alexander Usyk is when it comes to his weight coming off of all of that. And number two, of course, Anthony Joshua, they're under the tutelage of Robert Garcia. And yes, we have seen Robert Garcia, train the likes of multiple fighters. Yes, I did talk about Robert Garcia, kind of like give a little bit of more seasoning to Bam Rodriguez in his performance against Srisaket Sor Rungvisai last night. But I'm really interested in seeing what this means for what Anthony Joshua does against Alexander Usyk when that fight does take place in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Um, and yes, I do know about Anthony Joshua's new deal with the zone. Um, and like I said, I mean, it makes him, one of the most lucrative fighters there in the sport of boxing. When it's basically him and Canelo Alvarez, of course. That's why, a number of people were kind of like upset with Canelo Alvarez going the route of facing a Dmitry Bivol, because from a financial perspective, you don't get as much fighting a Dmitry Bivol as you would get fighting a Jamal Charlo or David Benavidez. But hey, whatever whatever Eddie Reynoso says goes in that instance. And it looks like whatever Eddie Reynoso is saying is pretty much going to Canelo because if y'all haven't paid attention, there's been a good amount of fighters that have left the Reynoso stable. You have Ryan Garcia. Now you have Frank Sanchez that's left. And it seems like Andy Ruiz Jr. has left too. So yeah, what's going on there with the Canelo team? I mean, we've had a couple of other fighters that have left before all of that, but you had these two heavyweights, Frank Sanchez Foray and Andy Ruiz Jr. leaving, and you had Ryan Garcia leaving, who could have potentially been one of the more quote unquote lucrative fighters that you could have in your stable outside of Canelo Alvarez. That's kind of raising a few eyebrows though. So I don't know. That might be something to kind of like look into. Is it too much food on the plate of Eddie Reynoso? Kind of like suggested that, but think about it is like he's had all of these fighters for some time, and when you have all of these fighters and they have they can have the success that they have, they're gonna get into bigger fights. They're gonna get into fights that require a lot of time and a lot of attention, and you're only one dude. And this pretty much was evident. It was evident in April and May. You had two of your guys, Oscar Valdez and Canelo Alvarez, in two big fights. Valdez against Shakur Stevenson, Canelo against Dmitry Bivol. Both of those fights within a week's time. And both of them lost. Come on, man. Something's up with that. Something's up with that. But we'll kind of like eventually see what happens with all of that. And see how that goes. So there's that too. I don't think there's really that much out there as far as like news is concerned. I pretty much like went over the fights that have been announced and that was going down, and you had face-offs with Usyk and Joshua and all that type of stuff and whatnot. So I mean, I know that there's like some type of news with Tyson Fury that's happened. I know that he's kind of like talking about some stuff about like Fury and Joshua, him and Joshua, saying that he tried to make a fight with Anthony Joshua at least 6 times in the last 5 years. Yeah, whatever. But he needs to be more concerned about him trying to leave the UK. Yeah. Yeah, he needs to. Yeah, he needs to be a little bit more concerned about leaving the UK because there's been a couple of times when he's tried to do that. You know, uh, you know, trying to leave the UK, and it's kind of like not been happening. And I thought, and if I'm not mistaken, doesn't he have some type of property over in Las Vegas or something? When he had those few fights over here in the US, and he was fighting Deontay Wilder and Otto Wallin and Tom Schwartz and that type of thing. He was over there chilling in Las Vegas, right? So what's happening to all that? I don't know. Shout out to Ozzy Nandias in the live chat. Thank you very much there. But yeah, we had the last. Of course, we have all that news that's happening over in the UK and stuff like that. Oh no. Yeah, I know that, man. But I'm just saying though, like when you had this news coming down about him trying to leave, and they saying, "Nah, you can't leave the UK because of his ties with Mr. Daniel Kinahans." Yeah, you're gonna have to get something straightened out, because I mean all this stuff that's going down with Kinahan over the past month or so. He might be a little bit involved in all that, and we might have to look into that a little bit more because I know that there's a couple of people out there that's saying like, hey, why isn't these newspaper or ESPN type reporters kind of like following up on this particular story? We'll see. The live, kind of live chat, yo. All right, but we'll see what happens there with Mr. Tyson Luke Fury later on down the line. But outside of that pretty much covers everything that I needed to cover in this particular episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. Thank everyone that participated within the live conversation here. This will be available through Anchor FM or iTunes, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or whatever you use, within your podcast apps. But with that being said, that brings an end to this particular episode. And like I say, at the end of every episode, point of boxing is to hit and not get hit, not to stand and train. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.